Okay, Boker Tov, good morning. We're running a few minutes late, so I didn't even get a chance to make myself a coffee. What should I tell you? Even though this is referred to as Sunday morning Torah and Coffee. So hopefully you have a coffee as you're sitting here ready to learn with me, giving me the merit. We start off with the mitzvah of putting in some tzedakah. We did that so that we could start with a mitzvah and also elicit blessing for having success in our Torah learning today, teaching, learning, and inspiring both the listeners and myself. The Talmud tells us, and I hope I'm quoting this correctly, that Harba, I learned a lot from my teachers, I learned more from my colleagues, and I learned the most from my students. So some of the listeners here are both my teachers, my colleagues, and my students. So hopefully I gain a lot of wisdom and learning just in this interaction of teaching here on Facebook, YouTube, etc. So I'm going to connect two things together. I will share a personal story. I might have shared it in the past, but it's nevertheless apropos to today's discussion and today's the time that we stand in. Let me explain. Yesterday we read in the Torah portion the story of Korach. Many of you know that story. That's the famous story where Korach led a rebellion against Moses. He's the first to lead a rebellion against Moses. We find many times in the Torah while the Jews were in the desert or in Egypt that they kvetched. They kvetched. We know what kvetching means, right? They kvetched, they whined, they complained to Moses. And they were difficult, but this is the first time the first time and the only time where we find an actual rebellion, where Korach leads a rebellion against Moses. I'm not going to get into all the details of the story. There's a lot of discussion that we can be had, but I will get into some detail as it relates to today's discussion and the lesson of the lesson that we can take from it. And it also relates to the fact that in 2 days, or tomorrow night, is the 30th yahrzeit, day of passing of the Rebbe and Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. So I want to connect the two thoughts over here. So the Torah tells us that Korach led a rebellion against Moses, and there was a very unusual punishment that God sent to Korach and his group. As the Torah says that Moses, after making every attempt to quell, to influence, to bring peace, and he tried speaking to them again and again, they accused Moses that all that he's done, all that he has done, meaning in terms of appointing both himself, his brother, and others to positions of leadership, was not something that he was instructed by God. He did it on his own. And there were various other complaints that they had. And the punishment was that Moshe himself said that if God did not send me, may the people die a regular, timely, natural death. But if God did send me, let this amazing miracle occur, where the earth will open up its mouth and let them all be swallowed up. And the Torah tells us, the Bible tells us, that that's exactly what occurred. All of a sudden, the earth opened up and swallowed up Korach and the Adaso and his congregation and his group. So, several questions over here. Why Korach? Why would he lead? What was the underlying problem or motivation over here of why he led this rebellion against Moses? And number two, amongst many other questions that commentaries, there's so much rich insight into this story, but the commentaries address. But here a second obvious question is, why specifically this type of punishment of being swallowed up into the earth? If God wants to do away, if Moses wants to do away with those challenging Moses, and that he is the messenger of the Almighty, there are so many punishments that are not so sort of literally, as they say, no pun intended, so earth-shattering. There are many ways that God can do away with those who are challenging Moses and really by extension challenging him. So why specifically swallowed up by the earth? And what is this connection to Gimel Tammuz, to the Rebbe's leadership? As the foremost leader of our time, there is so much that can be discussed on the Rebbe and his greatness and his leadership. Whoever is listening to this class now has been impacted by the Rebbe's inspiration, leadership, example, ideas, approaches to Torah, to life, to world, to human beings. And for that, I suggest you go to Chabad.org or CoralSpringsChabad.org, and you could read up a tremendous amount of material and so on. But I want to focus on one idea over here. Even though Sunday we don't rush, but I want to focus, we still have limited time, so I want to focus on one thought over here. One of the underlying explanations that is given for why Korach led a rebellion against Moses is because he was jealous. Good old jealousy. You know, in the beginning of creation in Genesis, we find already the first sort of catastrophe, or the second catastrophe. The first catastrophe was the eating of the forbidden fruit, which also came about from an element of jealousy with the snake. The serpent was jealous of Adam and Eve. So you have jealousy right there at the beginning of creation. And then you have Cain and Abel, Cain and Hevel, the two brothers, and there was jealousy there. Jealousy is an age-old problem. And here too, Korach was jealous that he was overlooked when it came to leadership, and he was jealous of Moshe and Aaron, Moses and Aaron. Now, one of the both underlying results and the underlying causes and the results of jealousy is not only low self-esteem, but the mistake that one makes in what their qualities are, what their purpose is, what their mission is, what their talents are, and what they need to utilize their talents and recognition and being happy for what someone else has. So when Korach says to Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm jealous of your position, and that's the underlying, whether he said that directly, probably not, but his underlying motivation, as is alluded to in the Torah and more elaborated in the teachings of our sages, essentially what a person like that is saying, or when a feeling like that says, is that I don't allow you, in Yiddish we say, I begrudge you the qualities and the gifts that you have, and I don't recognize enough and value enough and put into action enough the qualities that I have. I was given the qualities that I need for my purpose and mission in life, and that's all what's important. You know, the Mishnah says, Ezeu Ashir, it's a known Mishnah in Ethics of the Fathers. Ezeu Ashir hasameach bechelko. Who is wealthy? Now, if you ask someone on the street who's wealthy, their answer might be, Bill Gates. Who else? Who else are the big machas there that are wealthy? Jeff Bezos. They might say, what's his name from Tesla? Elon Musk. Those are the people who are wealthy, right? That would be the common on the street answer to that question. But what does the Mishnah say? Ezehu Ashir, who is wealthy? Let's see if you can finish the statement. I know many of you can. Says the Mishnah, Ezehu Ashir, who is wealthy, hasameach bechelko, one who is happy with his lot. Now, the words of the sages are meduyak, they're exact. And within their answer, you could even see a message over there of how one should be happy. It doesn't say, it says, Ezeu Ashir, who is wealthy, Asameach Bechelko, who's happy with their lot. It could have used various terms over here. Ezeu Ashir, Asameach B'mashi Yeshlo. They're happy but with what they have. Chelko means his chelik, his portion or her portion. The Mishnah is hinting to us and telling us that this is an answer of how you should be happy. You have to understand that your lot is your lot. That's what you're destined to have. The Talmud says that there were various people that were consumed by jealousy for what someone else had. And the Talmud said there was a twofold problem over here. They did not get what they wanted. Why? Because it's not theirs. Don't touch what's not yours. They were not, for example, the Talmud uses the example of Haman who wanted more and more and more from the Purim story. He lost, or he did not get what he wanted, and he lost even what he had. On a deeper message, what does it mean that you lose what you have? It doesn't necessarily, it's not limited to meaning that you just are going to lose your wealth. But I would suggest also a deeper insight over here, that if you have something and you're not content and you don't appreciate and you don't value and you don't use what you have because you're consumed by jealousy of someone else or what someone else has, then two things are happening over here. You're not going to get what someone else has because it's not yours and it's not meant for you. And number two, what you do have, what does it mean that you have something? If you have $1 million in the bank and you don't know the value of $1 million, you're a 2-year-old, you don't understand its value. Do you really have it? Are you enjoying it? Are you using it? I remember an individual years ago who was a multimillionaire. I knew him personally. And just the way both he and his family lived, you could see that they were so stingy on themselves that it was sad. It was sad. So does this person have that kind of wealth if you can't even enjoy it? Never mind share it and give it in charity and help others, but you can't even enjoy it for yourself and your own family. You're living like a pauper. Do you really have it? And by extension, when you have good health, you have wisdom, you have talent, you have seichel, you're able to use your brains, you're able to use your heart, you're able to use your hands, and you don't appreciate what you have, and you don't put it into action. Do you really have it? People who are consumed by jealousy, unfortunately and sadly, very often, or not only very often, it's a direct result that they do not have. They do not cherish, they don't own it truly, that which they do have. So this is why the Torah tells us specifically that the punishment that Korach had was he was swallowed up by the earth. Instead of flying to heaven, instead of riding high with positivity and saying, this is what I got, as Moshe Rabbeinu himself said to Korach and the children, Rav lochem b'nei Levi, you guys have so much. God has given you roles, so much greatness. Be appreciative of what you have. Instead, Korach was consumed by jealousy. So then he doesn't have it. And the result of that is you become swallowed by the earth, representing deep depression, representing total dissatisfaction, representing being so earth-like. So that is sort of here the deeper message. The deeper message over here is that when, instead of valuing, appreciating the blessings that you have, the gifts that you have, which we all do, and you're consumed by jealousy of somebody else, so number one, you're in a sense coming from earth, because it's coming from a place of feeling inferior. And unfortunately, you'll end up even lower than that. You'll end up not having what you are trying to have, what you're obsessed with having, and you're going to also lose what you have, which is the deeper message of being swallowed up by the earth. What is the converse? What is the opposite? The opposite of this is not only valuing yourself, because why should you value yourself? Maybe I am a nobody. Maybe I should be jealous of somebody else. Maybe my life is miserable. Well, for that, you have to be connected to Moses, who tells us and teaches us that that is not possible. Because if we are created, as it says in the Torah, in the image of God, and each one of us has a neshama, And each one of us has a soul, and each one of us has a purpose, and we were given all the tools and all that we need to fulfill that purpose, then there is infinite value in each one of us, in myself, in understanding my value, not on an egotistical level, but in a level of my importance, because God created me. As the saying goes, God doesn't create junk or spare parts, which means that I have my own personal value, which is infinite, from Hashem, from God Almighty, and that's how I also view somebody else. Nobody else is to be dismissed. Nobody else is to be looked upon as not valuable, because if that would be the case, then I'm not valuable. Because the same innate, deepest, infinite value that I have applies to every other individual. And here I want to sort of transition into Gimel Tammuz, the yahrzeit of the Rebbe. There is countless stories of the Rebbe, where on the one hand he was the Moses and is the Moses of our generation. Although we are 30 years from the Rebbe's passing, his inspiration, his guidance, his blessings, his mission of uplifting and making better and showing the value of all of humanity and all of society only gets stronger. But I want to share a personal story. There's so many stories that I've heard and seen where the Rebbe has shown attention and care to an individual adult, a person. I remember, some of you might remember Charlie the Button Man, if you were ever in Crown Heights. He was semi-homeless in Crown Heights, and he used to have this hat, and he used to wear this overall jeans, and he had all these buttons on his hat, keep the Shabbos, keep kosher, like all these buttons they had. And every time he went by the Rebbe for kosher bracha, when the Rebbe would give out little cups of wine for everybody to give them blessing, the Rebbe would, with a huge smile, sort of give him a wave of encouragement, a simple, what you might argue, nobody. But the Rebbe gave him personal attention. I want to say a personal story to that effect. I might have shared this in the past. I don't know. From all the classes, whether it's here on the internet or in person. So if you heard the story, soll sein zu gesund. I mean, it's apropos for this time, for now, for Gimel Tammuz, and it's connected to the Parsha. So, as I've shared, this I know I've shared, you guys know a little bit my history. My dad, my biological dad, was an Auschwitz survivor. At the age when I just turned 5, he passed away from cancer. He was already sick from when I was, I think, 3 years old, so I basically don't remember him. I mean, I just have maybe 1 or 2 memories. Of course, I've seen pictures. But, so he passed away. Baruch Hashem, I did not, my father, being sort of what we might call a Hungarian or a Czechoslovakian Jew, did not grow up in Crown Heights or in the world of Chabad. He was an observant Jew, what we call a frum Jew. We were in Borough Park, neighborhood of Brooklyn. When my dad passed away, my mother, about 1.5 years later, married a Chabadnik, a Lubavitcher, Rabbi Wolshansky, Rabbi Rafal Wolshansky, my stepfather who raised me. And to give a little sort of background and understanding, it was a time when there was, pre-internet, pre-smartphones, if you could only imagine. For some of us, we remember that very clearly. For some of us, that's like saying, pre-refrigeration or maybe there's some here that remember that too. But I don't. Or pre-plumbing. But as a result of that, if you grew up in one neighborhood, you were totally, especially as a child, I didn't drive at that time, you basically had no understanding, insight, familiarity, interaction with some of the other Hasidic groups. And Chabad was in Crown Heights. I was in Borough Park. Chabad was like a total alien, strange world to me. I really had no idea what it was. And then my mom married a Chabadnik, a Lubavitcher. I was going to a yeshiva in Borough Park called Yagdal Torah, which was by the Ger Hasidim. And I believe, my first year that I went to a Crown Heights yeshiva was in Ohel Torah, which was either 1st or 2nd grade. And you can imagine, here I am, a young boy, taken away from all my friends, in sort of plunged into a total new environment, and it was a challenge for a young boy. So I remember I was at one of my first Farbrengens by the Rebbe. Thousands of people there at the Farbrengen. Again, a total new, strange world to me. And I am sitting near my stepbrother, Reb Itcha Volshansky, who was the Rosh Yeshiva in Tzfas. And, my three stepbrothers immediately embraced me, took me in as their own brother, which was amazing. And at the Farbrengen, I'm sitting by Rabbi Itcha Volshansky. He's the middle brother of the three. Today, he's the very known, famed Rosh Yeshiva in Tzfat. And I'm sitting right at the side. His spot was maybe 10 feet, 15 feet away from the Rebbe, maybe 20 feet away from the Rebbe, but there was like a table. You ever see pictures of the Rebbe's Farbrengen? There was a table, and then there was like a bit of an aisle, so there was like a direct view of the Rebbe's seat, the Rebbe's chair. And I was sitting by the table there on the bottom. This was like a table so whoever who was standing at the side of the Rebbe knew that's to where you could come. And then there was this open aisle, so there was some space around the Rebbe. And I was sitting under the table. There was like a little ledge that kept the 2 feet of the table together. So I was sitting on that ledge. And if you know, the style of the Rebbe's Farbrengens was that he would talk for half hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is, give a talk, an insight into the Torah, words of inspiration, etc. And then there was usually a 5, 10, 15-minute break where there was l'chaim said, there was singing, and then the talk continued. Probably 5 to 10 minutes was usually the singing time. So during the singing, at some point during the singing, the entire crowd bursts out in joyous song, again, between the talks of the Rebbe. And at some point, the Rebbe turns, as the Rebbe would usually sort of scan the crowd from right to left or left to right, and would respond. People would raise their little cups and say l'chaim to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would respond by giving, by responding and saying l'chaim. And the Rebbe turned sort of to me. The Rebbe was turning, everybody was singing, and the Rebbe turned to me. And the Rebbe started to clap to me. Now remember, I'm a child. There's hundreds, thousands of people there. I mean, I'm a little child. And the Rebbe turned to me and started to clap. And I didn't know what to do. So my brother grabbed me sort of by the shoulders, by my shirt, by the shoulders, and started to just yank me up and down. And the Rebbe gave a huge smile. The Rebbe smiled. It was a smile that lit up the room. I sort of lived with that smile throughout my life in difficult, challenging times. I try to bring up that smile. And I say to myself, here I was amongst a crowd of, the Rebbe zeroed in on a child. He zeroed in on a child. I would like to believe that the Rebbe, as we know so many stories, was able to sense people's thoughts because of his holiness and his spirituality. He could connect on a soul level. And he uplifted a child in a time of sort of a child's difficulty, struggle in their life. And he paid attention, and he showed the value of one individual, one child. So that is the lesson of the Parsha. That is a lesson of Gimel Tammuz. It's a lesson not just to tell us how great the Rebbe was. That's not the way it sort of works in Judaism. It's not the way it works in Torah. It's to teach us a lesson. To teach us a lesson, not necessarily in this order, but just for the sort of sense of how we want to express this, is that with your own self, remember how valuable you are. Remember how valuable and the purpose. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the great chief rabbi of England, of blessed memory, said when he met the Rebbe, he said that many great leaders created great followers, but the Rebbe created great leaders. It is our job, the way the Rebbe did this, the way he created great leaders, is not only by highlighting our own value, but recognizing or inspiring us to recognize how valuable everyone else is, and therefore we should do whatever we can to help, to uplift, to cherish, to encourage, to focus in, to allow another individual to notice their own qualities and greatness, to pay attention to someone who needs uplifting. That is one of the thoughts and one of the messages that I want to share in honor of Gimel Tammuz, in honor of Korach. And, Gimel Tammuz is a very auspicious day. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya, first Chabad Rebbe in the holy book of Tanya, the mystical book of the Kabbalistic book of Tanya, says that on a day of one's passing, all the person's deeds, all their good deeds, sort of concentrated and shines forth on that day. Imagine how powerful that is when you take into account the continuing good deeds that continues to happen by the millions as a result of the Rebbe's teachings and inspiration. Imagine how powerful that day is. It's a day where we send requests and blessings, and even as important, or maybe more importantly, make resolutions for continued improvement, spiritual improvement, Jewish improvement. If we could be of any help in that way, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you for listening, for allowing me to share these words of Torah. May you have a wonderful, blessed, and fantastic week.